Procore is a B2B SaaS software company that connects all of the companies that have to work together to put a project to build a building, right? From where you are standing right now to infrastructure, roads, airports, etc. Digitize all those processes that used to be in paper, bring them digital, and now we are in the cusp of being able to leverage that data to bring more ROI for our customers. About the construction industry, is a $10 trillion industry. It's one of the largest in the world. And it has just started to be digitized in the past 10 years, in fact. And what that means is that, you've seen construction sites with these big papers with their drawings, binders where they have the checklist of things that are going wrong in the building. All of those processes still today in most parts of the world are running on paper. For huge projects, there's very little data on how they build these projects because everything just happens offline. But that is starting to change. 110 terabytes of data and growing are running through Procore. And that number keeps growing as we expand globally. So it is now that it is very interesting to start looking at that data and figuring out what can we do. And that's the question that we have at Procore. We're starting to try to figure out where can we bring the most value with our data. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today is how to get ROI of these products as a product manager, right? What do you need to look at to build data products and to convince your organization, such as Procore, that you need to invest in data? And how do you then manage that investment to make sure that you're not losing trust from your stakeholders and that you can continue get funding to be able to build your products? And when I say data products, I do mean products that are using models in between the product, the process, and customers. Why? Because industries like construction that are not very modern and forward in their digitization look at data products as a dashboard, right? It's a one-to-one relationship where there is a customer and then there's the product. And when I bring more data to the system, the product improves marginally for my own use case, but it doesn't improve it for the rest of the users in the platform. Well, when you have a data product with a model in between, the model improves every time new users are starting to add data to that model. And so these data products benefit of network effects to build sustainable over time. So what we focus on when we build data products is in establishing data learning loops, meaning the job of the product manager, as we see it in Procore, but this is my point of view, is that our job is to find those data learning loops for our models so that they're self-sustaining and that they can keep growing and bringing benefit to the entire network. And what do I mean why it's so hard to build data products at organizations? I used to work for a company called Figure 8. We were in the conference, and the talk before I was talking about data labeling. Figure 8 is a platform for machine labeling data. Basically, in one side, you have customers that are trying to get data labeling to create their ground truth. And on the other side, you have data labelers that are getting paid to label this data. But the interesting thing about my job at Figure 8 was looking at all the verticals and the variety of customers that are trying to build data products. And unfortunately, 80% of these customers are failing in their machine learning projects. There's a lot of churn that Figure 8 had because projects start with a lot of investment and then they burn and then they don't start again because product managers are losing interest from their stakeholders. So I've become very interested in figuring out how do we create a process in which we can start data products at organizations that are not data native, that are starting to figure out what do they do with their data. And the reason why it's so hard is because you start with hype, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to get started. But your first project is never going to be the most successful. It's going to flop, it's going to have errors. And as soon as that happens, your stakeholders, your leadership is going to be disillusioned, is going to feel that what it is promised is not what they were expecting. And so there's a lot of valleys there, right? And then you convince them, then you may find a little bit of success in that product, but just when you find success is when you need to start telling them that they need to invest more, because maybe you need to get infrastructure, you need to build a data platform, they need to pour more monies because you need to label more data. Well, the product that you told them that you were building is just starting to have success, and you're still asking for more money to build more product. And so then you go, and again, you have to build more trust. And that's the whole ups and downs of what is to build data products at organizations that are not starting from the ground up building these products and that are not used to building it. And the reason why building these data learning loops is so important is because as soon as you can find that human in the loop, that idea that your own customers are improving your model over time, then the investment that you're making is less and less, and you can sustain those projects over time. So from my perspective, what you need to get right are three things. And I'm going to go through these three things of what we've done at Procore to make sure that we can sustain our investment in data and data products and AI. The first one is that before you get started, this is not anything about AI, this is not anything about your machine learning model, is that you need to have a very clear mission and vision and a product strategy with a clear path to enabling these data loops, right? So forget about your ideas for machine learning, for AI. If your company doesn't have a clear strategy on how they're going to win in the market and what your stakeholders care about, then go and do that first. And don't invest in data before you can do that, because data is an enabler of this strategy. The second thing is that you're going to find a North Star with a Goldilocks starting point, and I'll explain what I mean by that. And the third thing for product managers in my team, what I tell them is our job 60 to 70% of the time is stakeholder management, which that means is storytelling. And the error that we can constantly do is that we explain these machine learning projects in the language of the technical audience, right? We talk about accuracy. We talk about F1. We talk about how our model is improving. And we convince stakeholders that that's what they need to care about. But in reality, what they need to care about is what they care about forever, which is customer outcomes. And that's the language that you need to be using. So let's go on the first one. Like, what does it mean to build a strategy that you can use to build data products? Well, in the case of Procore, you need to have, or in any case, you need to have a very clear mission and tactics to win that mission, right? So in the case of Procore, our mission is to connect everyone in construction on a global platform. We have this on banners, we have this on everything we read. Everybody knows that a mission as an organization is to connect everyone in construction on a global platform. And so if everybody's aligned around that, then you can use just that paragraph to figure out what do you do to connect everyone in construction on a global platform. So the strategy also has to have tactics, right? What are the concrete things that the organization is going to do to win in that mission? So three things that we think are important for Procore are connecting all stakeholders, meaning, and stakeholders in a construction project means the owner, that person that is going to put money to build the building, the general contractor, which is the group of the company that is managing and building managing the project, and then the specialty contractors, all the trades that need to come together, the electrician, the concrete, all of those are sub-companies that come together. In essence, it's a network that needs to work together in one platform. So we need to figure out how do we do that, and how do we do it really well. The second one is that we need to accelerate growth in our financial products. Well, for us, it's very important to have in our strategy a project that basically we need to grow, because financially, as a company, we need to grow somewhere. So the company decides that that's where we're going to put a lot of our investments, in growing our financials portfolio. And the third one is that we need to win pre-construction. Pre-construction is before you build ground. There's a lot that happens, from the architects designing the building all the way from the general contractors and the specialty contractors finding each other to be able to work together. So how do we win in pre-construction so that our competitors don't take that side of the market as well? And why that is important, you'll figure, like you'll may be asking, this is about data, why is that important? Well, because you can use those tactics to then figure out what are your North Star questions. You can translate each of the tactics that the organization cares about in questions that you can answer with data. So in the case of connecting all stakeholders, a question that we think is important, because obviously we've done the research, we understand with our customers, we put this in front of our customers and say, these are our tactics, what are the main things that you're concerned about in these areas? So in the first one is, what are the best companies I can hire for this project? That's what they care about when they want to connect with each other, right? Just like any other network, they want to find the best people that they can connect with. Data can solve that. The second one is accelerate growth in financial products. Well, our customers buy our financial portfolio because they want to make profit. And what they want to know is, what do they need to do in our product to be able to mitigate risk and create profit? Potentially something that we can solve with data. And the third one in pre-construction is, do I have a competitive bid? Meaning I'm a specialty contractor, there's a new building that is going to be built in an area of my community, and I want to bid on that project. Our specialty contractors want to know, is that the right project for me? And do I have a winning bid? And so we could help them with data on that. So we decided that those are our three, as they relate to these three tactics, those are our three questions that we were going to go and answer. And so why are these important for your team? These are goalposts. This is how you define success for your machine learning team, for your data product team. There are three things that these goalposts enable you to do. The first one is that they will help you understand how customers attempt to answer these questions today, right? So even without technology, our customers are figuring out how do they make profit. Even without technology, our customers are connecting with each other. And they may be looking at different data sets, at different inputs to find that answer. Finding those inputs is what ultimately will convert into our ground truth, is the data that we need to be able to train our models. The second one is that we identified the data needed to answer these questions, right? Where are we going to find that data? Do we find it from sensors? Do we already have it in our database? Do we need to go and acquire that data? It creates a strategy for data acquisition, and it helps define the scope of these questions that we're trying to answer. And the third one is that with these questions, as a team, you start defining what are the processes to acquire, prepare, and process this data, right? Your data engineering team can start figuring out if your data to answer question A is of streaming, well, I may need to build a streaming platform so that I can acquire that data from streaming. If it's about connecting different data sources, maybe you have something S3 and the other one is, and you have, for example, we may have unstructured data in an S3 bucket, and maybe we have a structured data in another database. Your team can start figuring out eventually we need to start connecting these systems to bring that data together. So your data platform team starts forming without having to invest too much money yet in a data platform. I want to be very careful with that you may want to just immediately go and invest in a data platform, but that's not what is important here. What is important is just defining what are the parameters that you may need to invest in the future. All right, so that was the first part of a mission with tactics and North Star questions that help the team define how do customers answer the question today so that you can identify what data you need. The second one is, where do you get that data? And the third one is the processes that you may need to process that data. And it's all around those North Star questions. You're not going to diverge in finding other problems. But then you're not going to go and solve those questions, because those are really, really hard questions to solve. And this is where the majority of the companies that I saw at Figure 8 make the first mistake. They basically burn their shots. They choose a project that is too small, that nobody cares about, or is way, way too big and too hot that everybody cares about, and they fail, then they ultimately lose funding. So you need to choose something that is somewhere in the middle, not too hot, not too cold. Why? Because if you choose that project that is just right, it allows you to define what are the milestones that it will take you to finally answer that question that you're trying to answer. It also allows you to make the mistakes that you need to make without breaking a very important workflow for the organization. And it allows your team to experiment, to figure out different models, to have the time to understand how to build what you need to build. So finding the right project is key. So how do you do that? What are the things that you need to consider? What is a Goldilocks project? What a Goldilocks project has is that it has a real customer problem tied to one of your North Star questions, right? It has to be real customer problem that is around the questions that you're trying to answer. That's the first and foremost. The second one is that the data needs to be readily available. If you don't have a way to get data from sensors, just don't answer that question at the beginning. If you don't have a way to stream data to your systems, don't do that to get started, right? What's data that is readily available that you don't have to bring from multiple sources and that you can immediately access with the resources that you have? The third is that it has to be measurable from the onset, right? Many teams made the mistake to say, I'll measure it later once I get more users onto the product. And that is a mistake. You have to be able to know what is the outcome that I'm trying to achieve and what are the metrics to achieve that outcome. And it needs to be instrumented from the beginning, and data needs to start flowing into that metric right away. The fourth one is that it should test your end-to-end development cycle. This is why it cannot be too small. Because if it's too small of a project, then you don't understand what does it mean to deploy it in the application. You don't create a challenge for at least getting out of your database and into the system, right? So you need to figure out what is the right size that you can fully complete the cycle of data development, all the way, not just to deployment, but to building that learning loop that we discussed, right? Your customers need to be able to give you feedback, and the feedback that they give, whether it's thumbs up or thumbs down or any other tactic, needs to go back into your systems to feed the model and improve it, because you need to prove that your model is going to be better over time with that first Goldilocks. And then the fifth one, which I think is also incredibly important, is that it cannot be in a critical workflow. So if your company's promise is to make payments easier, well, don't build something that will make payments harder, right? Don't choose a project that is immediately attached to the value of your company to your customers. Pick something that is adjacent to that workflow so that you don't break something. And you'll be surprised, I think, when I listed these things, it seems that to me like everybody will be like, well, that's obvious. But these mistakes happen all the time. We are very ambitious. We want to pick something that is important, and we choose things that ultimately are going to slow down our progress. All right, so how did we choose our first Goldilocks projects? The first thing that we did in the organization. The North Star for us, one of the North Stars that we chose was, what do we need to do to ensure the highest profit in this project? This is something that our customers ask all the time. They buy our financial products for a lot of money, but ultimately they want to find that answer. And they pay a lot of people just to manage budgets, to figure out how to make profit. But that's a very hard question to answer, because there's so many things that happen in a building over years that is very hard to answer that question right away. So there are multiple questions that are sub-questions to that main question that the budget managers at construction companies follow, right? One of them is, for example, is my contingency budget right for this project? So contingency is, do I have extra, what is my extra budget if something goes wrong? And do I budget enough? That's a question that is easier to solve than if the entire project is going to be profitable. A second question that we could go and solve is, are we at risk of general conditions funds overspend? General conditions is the money that our customers spend on their own people. So this can be controlled by them. It's not the materials, it's not the structure, it's their employees, right? So how much money are they budgeting for staff? And the third one is, what type of projects are more profitable for us, right? Even before they start the project, they want to make sure that they're entering into a project that they can be successful at. So now these questions become more attainable. Any of these questions could be a Goldilocks project. But if we go one by one, in the 5 steps that I mentioned, some of these questions we may have not had the data we needed. they may not be measurable immediately. They may be a critical workflow for our customers. So the one that we picked after we went through the 5 steps was, are we at risk of general conditions funds overspend? And so we built a prototype, and we went through the entire development cycle. I'm not going to go through that, but the point here is that what we were trying to do is build something that was important to our customers, that we can help them right away, that will challenge our team end to end, and that we can measure. And what do we mean by measure, right? One of the mistakes that we make in these data projects is that our metric for our data products are accuracy, or something related to that technology. And that's something that you need to avoid at all costs. You may have that metric for your team internally to know if the model is good so that it solves a problem. But ultimately, what is a metric that the organization cares about? In our case, we care about usage of our financial products. We care about engagement of our financial portfolio. So something we could move for the organization as we solve the problem for our customers is engagement with our financial tools. And so the metric that we put here is that we were going to get 90% of customers or users that see that, that chart that we show of general overspend to take an action directly on the budget tool as a result of seeing that insight. And we could measure with the funnel if customers were seeing the insight, clicking on the take action, and then ultimately making a change in the budget tool. And we define success for the organization as that, right? We didn't go and tell them something that it was different from what they needed to expect from us. So we set expectations at the right level so that we can be successful in what we're trying to achieve. And then we also define a learning loop, right? So we created a feedback mechanism in which our customers were going to give us feedback on the general conditions, and then we will take that feedback from our customers and then improve the model over time. So the entire project, it took us 3 quarters to build, and we were able to start driving ROI of that product and start building other projects that were a little bit more ambitious. But the next thing that you need to do, which is very important, is as you go in that journey, because that's not going to be the main project that you're going to do, is that you need to start managing your stakeholders. There's a lot of people in the organization that really care about data, especially when you're investing so much money that the organization has. Most of your funds in your R&D team are ultimately going to go to your data team. And so a lot of the expectations that the leadership has will be, what is the ROI that you're bringing? And it's the job of this team to manage those expectations. And some of the questions that you're going to get in organizations that are not used to working with data are things like, should we solve a different problem? This problem is not important, or this problem is too hard, or this problem is not important. We're not seeing the success you promised. This is probably because you promised something that you could not achieve. This is very expensive. Where are the results, right? We just signed a new vendor that is promising to get us the data faster and organizing it faster. And where is the ROI of that you're demonstrating, right? Should we sell your data? This is a very common one, right? Once you get the solution with your data products, the main thing that your leadership is going to say is, we have a lot of data, why don't we package and sell it? Like, what is your monetization strategy with data? This is usually because you're just building the wrong thing, et cetera, et cetera. So the goal here is, how do I make sure that I take all of these opinions and continuously drive alignment across the organization? And the reason I'm talking about this is because it's surprising when I joined Procore how much work the entire team needs to spend on just aligning the organization on the road, because the road is very long and it's going to take a multi-year span to try to find the ROI that the organization cares about. So how do you do this? There are 3 things that we do all the time. But at the end of the day is that you need to start whittling out all the distractions. The first thing is that new opportunities will emerge all the time. There's all the time a new thing that we can do. So keep your organization focused and your team focused on the North Stars of the strategy, right? Your slides always have to show, this is our mission, these are our North Stars, and these are the questions that we're after. If we achieve these questions, we're going to get to our strategy and where the organization needs to go. So repeat and repeat that question in that story. The second one is that you're going to have to communicate very often, and you're going to use that Goldilocks project, the success of that Goldilocks project, to demonstrate the end-to-end process, what metrics you're working with. And by the way, a lot of the time, some of the stakeholders that you need to manage is your own team, right? The team gets tired of not seeing progress. The team gets confused of where we're going. And so it's usually in every stand-up, in every meeting that you have, maybe every quarter, you're trying to figure out and trying to remind them where is it that you're going to go. And then the third one is keep your team motivated with the why and bring customer stories. We bring customer stories to our meeting all the time and try to show them what we can do with data and the problems that we're solving. So I'm going to stop there because that's basically the gist of the presentation about how to get ROI from your data products.